life becomes more beautiful and interesting when you realize how sad, unjust, and tragic it is. So even one of Nietzsche's thoughts about tragedy, he wrote a book called The Birth of Tragedy, and essentially the idea is tragedy is not a tonic of catharsis. Rather, tragedy is kind of a stimulus to life. Is that in spite of all the tragedy we may experience in life, life is still so beautiful, and tragedy is actually what elevates us and makes our life more beautiful. And I kind of like the idea. And so even with, you think about the most interesting people, right? All the most interesting people in history, or alive or dead or whatever, have experienced some sort of tragedy. And typically the more tragedy one has endured yet still trucked on and endured, the more interesting they are, right? Like, it's super sad, like Kanye's mom, she died, right? I think actually I'm not 100% sure the details, right? But actually you know, people are like, oh, she died doing plastic surgery, whatever, just so whatever. But I think actually it was like Kanye's mom was doing like a breast reduction surgery, where it's just like, I don't know, maybe her breast or her body, something was too heavy, so she wanted to lighten it to reduce the pain. But anyways, her dying was super tragic, right? And that gave birth to a lot of Kanye's, you know, Dawn album and concept and stuff like that. And you know, even for me, I've had my share of scars growing up, and I'm grateful for them, because that's what has made me who I am today. And actually that's what makes me so optimistic and positive. Is a person who's really positive and optimistic isn't somebody who's never endured pain or hardship or whatever. In fact, he or she who has experienced the maximum amount of pain, hardship, but yet somehow overcome it or survived, actually ends up becoming more robust in the long term. And so even with Sen, right, like, I don't want him to be sheltered. And even when I'm, you know, not so nice, I don't hide it from Sen, because I also want people to know that people should and must have a wide gamut of emotions, right? And because now the bias is, we're trying to sterilize humans, we're trying to make them as predictable, nice and kind, whatever, Ellen DeGeneres as possible. But the fact is, every single human being has a certain level of cruelty, of injustice, of quote badness in them. And even for myself, right, like, I try to be a super nice guy, right? But inwardly, of course, I'm like super judgmental, right? I was even thinking, I'm like, man, why do I not like expats so much, especially when you go to expat-y places? But I'm like, but then again, I'm an expat, so why am I so judgmental? And this is where it's kind of tricky, that there's some people that outwardly they seem super nice and kind and polite, whatever, but inwardly they might be like secretly judging you in a very negative way. And so almost in some ways, the best type of person or human being is the one who is actually maximally honest and transparent, even though they may not be the nicest. So in some ways, you should trust the asshole more than the person who seems like a nice guy, because if someone's an asshole, like, already out there, you know what their maximal bad behavior is, right? And then they're probably, there are a lot of things that they're nice about, right? But the nice guy, he's probably only a nice guy because he doesn't have the courage to be a bad guy, right? Another Lamborghini Urus, this one in red. So I guess some takeaway points, right? One, if you have certain like quote bad qualities about yourself, right? Rather than trying to hide it or stunt it, maybe it's good to just kind of like let it out. But also conversely, the more of a quote asshole or a bad person you allow yourself to become, conversely, you must also become more of a nice guy or a good guy, or like even a philosophical thought, right? In order to become more loving, you must also become more hateful. Because the big problem in the internet or culture or America, whatever, is that people seem to be really, really great haters without the love. So the love is essentially a component, right? So anyone who's like so full of hate, see if they have some love in them. Do they? I don't know. Do they just need a hug, right? Like, give your haters a hug, right? And just think to yourself that pain, suffering, badness, tragedy in life isn't to be something extincted or getting rid of, but maybe something that should be increased in order to reach more greatness.